You may recall in my last video that I started dressing up a rough-sawn piece of timber using the Melbourne Tool Company low angle planes. I started off by setting up the jack plane as a scrubbing plane by rounding the corners off and putting a slight camber on the blade. However, I didn't check my materials properly to start with, and I missed the fact that there was a little nail stuck in here, so I've had to start that again from scratch. I re-honed the blade, re-sharpened it, and it's good to go again. So rather than continue on that piece, I'm going to put that one aside and start the whole video over again with a rough sawn piece of timber. I've double checked there's no nails in this now, so I'm going to use the Melbourne Tool Company low angle plane set to show you how to prepare and dress a rough sawn piece of timber by hand. First up, without going into too much detail here, I'm just going to show you my version of setting this jack plane up as a scrubbing plane. What I'm going to do here is open up the mouth of the plane by protruding the toe out of the front of the plane by releasing the front handle and using the mouth adjustment lever, opening that mouth right up. All of these details can be found on the Melbourne Tool Company website under the downloads link. When adjusting the mouth lever, just be mindful of the direction you are adjusting so you can avoid bashing the toe plate into your blade. Once the mouth is right open, just double check that your blade iron is sitting square and not skewed either to the left or the right. Then we can begin. First, I'm going to check my grain direction. If I feel across the face of the timber here and see I'm not getting much friction or pushback, but if I drag my fingers back the other way, I can feel the fibers are lifting up. There's a few ways you can test this. Sometimes if you get a rag, push it one direction, you can feel the resistance. If you push it back the other direction, it gets stuck a lot more in the grain. There's different ways you can do it. Pretty easy by feel. Don't push too hard or you get splinters. So I know we're going this way. All right, so again, the mouth is wide open. I just want to scrub this down till it's relatively flat. So now that I've got that surface relatively flat, I'm going to move on to the smoothing plane. Now I've got the smoothing plane nice and sharp. It's a low angle blade. It's the lowest angle blade that they've got. Got it set so it's only going to take off a really fine shaving. I want to try to get this surface as flat as possible. Pretty paper thin, not quite uniform yet. I'm just going to keep making my way across the surface. Okay, it's a pretty haggard looking piece of timber. There's still a lot of really deep saw marks in here. I'm going to have to keep going a little while yet. It's kind of the consistency I'm after. Now I need to check this. Right, we are flat. And what we're looking for here is that this piece is completely flat. So there are no gaps lengthways. There are no gaps lengthways here. If I hold this diagonally, on the diagonal it is flat, there's no gaps. Now that I'm happy that that face side is nice and flat, I'm then going to move on to one of the edges. So I'm going to use Matsui Precision Square to work off this flat face. Essentially what I'm going to do is the same process as before. I'm going to scrub this down using my scrub set up in the jack plane and then smooth it off. And I'm going to get this nice and square. So I've got a flat face and then a square edge adjacent to that flat face. Right, now that edge is roughly scrubbed out, I'm going to clean it up nicely with the smoothing plane. The reason I'm going so deep here is this is a recycled piece of timber. It looks like it's had a bit of water damage. I don't really like the colour. It's got a really dark sort of mould colour through here, so I'm just going to keep going a little bit further, see if I can get that lightness to come through a bit more. It's obviously been a while since I've done this. Right, so you can see there I'm about 2 millimeters out. If you look really close. I've got a high point on this side and a low point there. When you're holding a square, make sure you don't hold it too tight against the handle, because sometimes you can be like The M's so square there and you're just holding it so tight that only the blade's down and the stock has actually got a gap in it. Alright, so you want to make sure you're holding it nice and loose so that you can feel that your stock is hard up against. Okay, and then your blade is touching at the top, and then you can see there that gap at the bottom needs to be addressed. So I'm going to take 2mm off this side, tapering down. No, I don't do anything super fancy here. I just hold the square along and then sight it from underneath. And I'm about 1.5mm to 2mm out all the way across that right edge. So all I'm doing is putting some marks on there from what I want to take off, playing those marks off. Just remember not to let that stock drop down. You need to keep that stock hard up against the side so when you come down you can still see that gap. Right, so I'm fairly high there still. I'm in no rush, so I'm just going to keep going down as I go. Well, as my discrepancies are pretty even all the way along, I've just got these marks parallel. If it were a little bit further out, so for example I'm going to take a little bit more off this, I'll just add a third stroke in there. Okay, so there'd be 1, 2, 3 strokes at this end, and the 2 would just keep going through to indicate how much needs to come off there. And as you can see, I'm still quite high on that side. Okay, that's flat, but that's where I'm really at there. Okay, we're getting a bit closer. Not so much down this end anymore. Just sort of through the middle, still needing a little bit wider at this end, so I'm just marking a few more lines on this side, not so much on the other end. So now I have a high spot through the middle and 2 high spots on this side. Try to get rid of those. Alright, still a tiny little high spot through here. Alright, so just checking that. I'm square all the way through there now. Alright, now we've flattened the surface and squared an edge. What we're going to do now is I'm going to square this edge. I have checked there's no nails in there this time. Okay, but we can't just check it for square. We've also got to check it for height. So I'm going to use a marking gauge. I'm just going to mark a height that I want to end up at so that we're not only square off this edge, but we're parallel along this face. There we have a parallel line I'm going to work to. See if we can both scrub it down to that line as well as get that edge square. But as I'm going through this, I'm approaching my line on the other side. Just going to check how I'm going for square. Okay, so my line side is on the high side. So because my line is on the high side, I don't really want to take any more off this other edge. I'm just going to keep checking. So far it's still pretty consistent. 2 strokes right on my line up here, so I don't really want to go too much further than that. Doesn't really matter if I do, I just have to be a bit narrow enough to remark my parallel line. Now just got a tiny little high point in the middle. So I haven't given myself enough play. I need to take a bit more out of this back side here, so I'm just going to have to remark that parallel line again. So it's just going to be a little bit narrower than I had marked previously. So now we have a flat face. We have 2 square edges The last thing now is to finish off scrubbing the last rough face. So not only do we have to get this flat, we've also got to get it parallel. Okay, so I'm just going to measure from one side. We're sitting about 45 on that side and up to 50 here. So this is our low side here. Okay, this is about 50 now, this is about 40. So as I'm going flat, it's obviously going to have to take more off this side. Alright, so what I'm going to do is set marking gauge to 40, about 42. Alright, so going back to the jack plane again, scrubbing the surface down. I'm running pretty high in the middle and then a little bit on the side. I don't think it'll ever get old seeing that. Okay, from about the middle back here, I'm uniformly high in the center. I'm just going to focus on that. Okay, so again, I'm just going through and marking any of those high spots. Alright, now I'm going to get my calipers and see how it went. Go right on 42 there. Right on 42 there. So that is 42 by 94, dressed all round. Just going to get my precision square again, hiding under all these shavings, and just double check. So now this is all actually dressed up nice. I am going to use a guide rail on a bandsaw and cut some more strips off this. I'm going to keep working on this piece of timber and turn it into a jewellery box of some description. You might ask, why would you do this? Why would you do it by hand when you've got the machinery that could quite easily do this about 1,000 times faster? Well, for me, it is simply the reward I get from it. I like preparing material by hand. I enjoy woodwork. I enjoy using hand tools. It's not for everybody, but it is for some. You might have a different process to how you dress your timber. That's just how I dress mine. So if you'd like to see more videos, you can head over to my channel at McDonough Design. For future videos, I'll show you how I will further utilise these Melbourne Tool Company low angle planes to create my own bespoke woodwork. Thanks again for watching, guys. I appreciate the support, and I'll see you again in the next video.